In July 2005, 25 Tlingit, Haida and Tsimshian elders gathered in Juneau, Alaska to speak and listen and meet with one another, to tell stories about their lives, their clans, their nations, and their land. Stories about embracing family and community wellness. The year before, these same elders had met to agree upon a common set of traditional tribal values. Those values were then taken to the 69th Annual Delegates Assembly of the tribe and unanimously adopted. They are as follows: discipline and obedience to the traditions of our ancestors, respect for self, elders, and others, respect for nature and property, patience. Pride in family, clan, and traditions is found in love, loyalty, and generosity. Be strong in mind, body, and spirit. Humor. Hold each other up. Listen well and with respect. Speak with care. We are stewards of the air, land, and sea. Reverence for our Creator. Live in peace and harmony. Be strong and have courage. These are the stories they told.
My name is Clara Peratrovich, and I'm from Clara, originally from Heidelberg. I was adopted out when I was 2 months old, and I'm half Haida and half Tlingit. And I was adopted out to elderly couple. Their names were Emma Adams and Tom Adams, and their Tlingit name, my mother's Tlingit name was Katse, and my adopted father's name was Kushtakanan. My adopted father was Shankwedi. My mother was Tlingit. And on the biological side, my father came from Taku, and he was Yenyedi from the Wolf clan. And his name was Tishwan. And my mother, on the Haida side, came from British Columbia, and her name was Zola Kogo. Anaskit, she married David, and later married Scott. And so she was Zola, maiden name Kogo, and my dad's name Anaskit, and later became Scott. So both clans, on my crest, I would be carrying the lovebird, because on the Haida side, I'm the eagle, and on the Tlingit side, I'm the raven. So originally, I'm branded as the first Tlihai. Tlingit and Haida. And so, being raised by the elderly couple that I mentioned, these stories, my father was 74 years old when he passed on, and my mother was 98 when she passed on. And all these stories, my first language was Tlingit. I've never had the opportunity to speak English until I entered school, and even then I had a hard time. It slowed my ability to read and write, but it gave me the knowledge to pass all my traditional learning to my children, and later became a language teacher, cross-culture teacher. And I got a teaching certificate from Sheldon Jackson after 6 years of going to school and learning how to teach my language in reading and writing. But the stories that I am going to be talking about is my adopted mother had a witness to a fire that occurred in Klawock. The first cannery, it went on history. The first cannery was built in Klawock, Salmon Cannery. And she was only about 4 or 5 years old when the cannery burned down. It started in the Webb house, she said, and it caught fire and it went right through the whole cannery setting. In the area there was a cannery, and next to it was the sawmill, and then there was the Webb house and all the houses where the workers stayed. It just burned out that whole section of the Klawock Island. Not the Klawock Island, but it was built on Chuck's Island at the point. And the remains later on was there. But going back to the story of the fire, my mother she witnessed the fire, and I don't remember the years this happened, but she went and helped the shaman. He was sitting down in the beach because the fire was curling over the village that was on that little island there and was endangering. They were evacuating the island, and the old man, the shaman, asked for his walking stick, his talking stick, you might call it. He says, "Chank da achutsakai achjit satan." And so, you gukshtut chasatan nelk. So my mother went after it. She says, "Granddaughter, go and get my walking stick. I've got it leaning at the corner of the room in the house." So she went up there and she got it. She was so small, the stick was too heavy for her, so she was just dragging it along and gave it to this shaman that was sitting there on the rock, facing the fire. And he went into his ritual act of, he had his rattle, singing, and then he just continued, and then he put his stick on the ground. He didn't stick it in the ground, he just had it there, and he says, "I'm going to lean my stick against the flame, and it's going to turn and it'll go the opposite of the village. I will save the village." And so he put the stick in front of him, and she says, "Would you believe that stick stood there, leaning towards the creek? Nobody was holding it," she says. "It was just standing there, as if somebody was holding it." And so when the wind breeze was coming out of the river, and it made that flame curl over the village, and this is the village here, was curling over, and all the houses that was up on the hill there was all in danger of burning up too. And so people evacuated, and they put their belongings into the boat, put their children on board, and they went and pushed the boats out with their children and instructed them to watch the smaller ones. And she was one of them. Her mother went and put her on board because she was the oldest, to take care of her sister and her brother, and all their belongings was on the boat, and they pushed her out. And when they went and drifted out, the parents turned around to help try to save the village by putting water over places that are getting too dry and ready to erupt in flames. And that stick stood there. And as the wind, he had it against the flame, and the wind came from the west. And gradually the flame started curling back up. She says it was really an interesting sight. The flame was curling back up towards the creek, and it just turned away from the village. And the shaman saved the village. As the fire was going down, the stick was going down with it, and nothing holding it up, just the spiritual powers of the shaman in that stick was holding the flame and curling it over, and it dies as it's dying down. That stick was going farther and farther down, not dropping, but it just like someone is leaning it down towards the ground. And so she says when the fire went out, that old man sat there until that stick was on the ground. He knew that it wasn't going to start again. And that's how the fire was put out. The old man, the shaman, saved the village of Klawak. So the other story that should come before this story is how Klawak was found. It was found by an old man, according to my dad, named Tlawa. He came from South Tongass, and he didn't like what the fur traders were doing in the community. And so he took his family. The fur traders were taking all the fur and trading it for alcohol. They introduced it to the people, and the people got used to it. They liked the lower 48 calls it firewater. In Tlingit it's called now. And the native people calls it the liquor now. They liked the taste of it, they liked the feeling, it made them feel good, but it destroyed the families. And so this one South Tongass native took his family and moved it north, and he went to Kasan. And when he brought his family to Kasan, his family had the same problem. I mean, not his family, but the same problem arose in Kasan, where they were having the same drinking problem, trading furs to get free all this rich furs. And so he told his wife, I want you to stay here with the children. I'm going to go and look for a new location where there's no environment like this here. And I would like to take my family there if I find a good place where there'll be plenty of food. And so that's what he did. He was gone for days. He walked and walked and walked. He finally went to the top of the mountain, Isresha, and he looked out to the west, and he discovered a big body of water, and there were seagulls there. So he walked down the hill, down the mountain, and when he got to around that water, he discovered it was a lake. So he started walking around the edges and just kept on walking and discovered there was a river flowing down. And so he followed the stream. As he was walking around the lake, there was a lot of deer, bear, berries, a lot of the things that he was looking for to survive on. As he was walking, he blazed a trail. He came across the creek and walked down. The creek was loaded with fish. And so when he came to a little island in the middle of the stream, we call it Salmonberry Island. And so as he walked through there, he decided, that's a nice location, I'm going to build a little lean-to. He went and built a little lean-to, and then he went and he got the fish, dried some, and he took that back to his family. He says, I found a location. I want to take my family there. So he went and brought his family there and lived at the mouth of the creek. And his name was Tlawa. And when he got his family gathering all this food, they had plenty enough. They built a house, and all of a sudden they discovered someone or some hunters came into the bay. They followed the smoke stream that was coming out of the creek, and here there were seal hunters. He didn't have a boat. He was just in the process of trying to build one. And these seal hunters came along, and the seal hunters were surprised to see smoke in the bay. It's a secluded bay where Kloak is located at. We're protected by Kloak Island. They call it an island that shields us from the west wind and the southeast wind. And so they came and they followed the smoke. And these people were hungry. And they found them. They said, we're seal hunters. We wondered where this smoke was coming from. It says, we haven't eaten for days. All we have is seal. And so he brought them to the house. And he told his wife, fix a meal for them. They're hungry. And so they did. His wife made a meal of dried fish, berries. Our native people are known to have dried fish, half-dried fish, and potatoes and stuff like that. He told them, I'm sorry, he says, I don't have any seal grease to give you to eat with your fish, but I have the main course, and I hope that you folks will be satisfied. And they were very thankful, these hunters. And when they were ready to leave, they told the house Clara to come down with them to their boat. When they got down there, they went and gave him the seal that he needed. He was so thankful. He had his wife pack dried fish and berries, food that they will use on their travel. And so it was a good trade. When you give something, that's a native tradition. You give something, a food to the person. In return, you pick up something, or you give them something that is of value also. And it's a trade in our traditional ways. And so this is a pretty good guide for our native people. That's how we say thank you. Gunas Chish.
Alisaya King Andas Lukunana Digula Digwa Wagina Nuya Daskit Alun Kilkana Digula Digwa Yahuwah Lihiyai Yahuwah Lihiyai Yahuwah Lihiyai Yahuwah Lihiyai Yahuwah Lihiyai Yahuwah Lihiyai